you like to pick up on that to start with?
Absolutely. I'll try not to get political because I have been told off for voicing my own opinions, which aren't always politically correct, but there we go. I think we all, just starting off with Boris's announcement last week with his roadmap to recovery, I think there was a huge amount of excitement, fervour, picking up the phones and booking stuff. And then over the couple of days that followed, but then I think people started to realise that, read the small print, and the confidence sort of waned slightly. But, and of course we've had the budget as well. So it's been quite an up and down sort of week. Oh, Ross is back. Oh, Ross, we've started without you.
Thank you. I am very sorry. I am now tethered to my iPhone, so this could be interesting.
Thanks, Ross. We've just introduced ourselves, and we've just started on the first question about support for the remainder of the crisis and what the government can do. So Kevin's just started before we lead into Mark, but I'll hand it back to the boss. Thanks, Ross.
Okay. So continuing on, I think part of the problem that our industry as a whole has had.
Thank you. Thank you. So you carry on because you're obviously mid-flow. I will pick up at the appropriate point for the next question. Just a quick from me. Thank you for all coming, and we're going to give you, as I say, plenty of opportunity to ask questions at the end. But these guys are going to share some of their views with you. And apologies again for my technology failure.
Yeah. So carrying on. Don't worry, Ross. It's fine. Our industry, I think, has been, as many of us feel, has been left behind by the government. You know, we've had little or no support. Hospitality in general, as far as the government are concerned, has been pubs, restaurants, and those of you who are lucky enough to have accommodation on site in hotels, like Mark, you've had an opportunity early on to take generate some revenue in that way. I think our industry, I think we're our own worst enemy in many respects, because we're such a disparate bunch of people. You've got various organisations that come together, and I think that's been our problem all the way along. I know we had a hospitality minister, or we're going to get a hospitality minister, but from my point of view, I think that's just a tad too late. I think if we'd have had one from the beginning, one who was shouting our corner from the word go, I think the industry as a whole, the meetings, events and hospitality industry would have had a lot more support from the government. And as far as the government is concerned, I don't think they are willing to look at or understand the actual scope of our industry, the number of people that it employs. And there's various numbers that are bandied about, from 500,000 to 750,000, and the revenue that it generates. And I think one magazine quoted the revenue generated by hospitality as a whole, that's from restaurants right the way through to events, is something like £89 billion. That's quite a substantial amount of money for the industry. And I, for one, feel totally let down. And looking to our venues, they're struggling very much so. And I think a lot of our agency colleagues as well are finding it very difficult at the minute. And it all comes to looking at what we do and what else we can do, but that's a different question. But I suppose the person to ask more about this is one of the guys who's at the sharp end, and that's our colleague Mark from Chiseldon.
Thank you. Look, my comment in regards to funding would be that, in short, it's questionable. I know the government announced in the budget that there was £18,000 to relaunch restart grants, but the 5 words that they've missed there, most people have missed, is up to 18,000 and due to restrictions. Now, I was seeing the June date from the rollout being no restrictions. So is there a poison chalice to come that we don't know about, or is it a case that that money will be available? I think we're working on the basis that we probably won't qualify for it somewhere along the lines. You know, we made applications for grants that had been announced earlier, you know, back at the end of last year. And I would describe the application process as confused, requiring multiple applications. And the system seems to be geared up to getting you to give up. But if you do complete the process, the so-called 2 weeks to getting the funds turns out to be a long way off. And we made applications in December, and I've just found out today that we've actually received the first of those grants. So yeah, sort of 3 months later. So that was a pleasant call just before coming on this. With the budget putting furlough through till September, one angle that's welcome, but that leaves me feeling that the government is already of the opinion that its timeline might slip. You know, from a budget perspective, for a business of my size, it basically said get up to speed quickly or go under. So, you know, a lot of fingers crossed from our side that we can get up and running quickly. In regards to a Minister for Hospitality, I think my feelings are it's long overdue. Hospitality needs to fall within one department, not two. But my fear is if you take the press coverage of hospitality, the winners of this will just be pubs, because the government seems to focus on pubs rather than anything else. So, yeah.
I think from that point of view, Mark, I think it's the government going for the popularist approach. You know, keep the masses happy with gin, beer and wine, and everything else will just float along behind it. That's my cynical view. I'm sure others on the panel will may or may not agree. But coming back to the question, do we think there will be any more support forthcoming from the government? I doubt it. What else can be done to avoid closures and job losses? Again, I think that comes into what were the famous quotes early on? Pivot. What is it, Martin? Pivot and
Prosper, isn't it?
Prosper. That's the one. And I know quite a few of our colleagues in the agency world have been doing all sorts of things like virtual and hampers and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I think there's not a great deal that will be coming from the government, if I'm honest.
No, and I would agree with you on that. And I think from a venue perspective, it's look after the bookings and the customers that you still have. Be reasonable, be supportive and encouraging to people. And the answer is yes to whatever the question is, and then find a way to deal with it rather than being stuck in this is what we do. What does the customer want?
And I think that's the whole crux of our industry, unless I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses. As an industry, we've always been one that adapts. We've been one that's always been fairly positive, and I think that's all we can do. And we've got to be positive, and we've got to have belief in what we do and what we're doing when we're going forward. You know, it has been a pretty crap year in no way, shape or form. And the positivity is the one that's going to get us through. That's the philosophy, agreed, according to Kev.
Thanks, guys. While we're on the kind of the uncomfortable subject of getting through the last bit of this, or hopefully the last bit of this, we've got a poll that we're going to launch. We've got a couple of polls. The first one is kind of how the things that are on your mind in terms of concerns at the moment. It comes through a bit of a venue lens, but I think you can kind of apply it to your own situation. So I'm going to launch that. And I thought I'd ask a question again, if the guys don't mind, that I asked them this morning when we were prepping, which was, I've noticed, because it's something that I'm interested in, that there's lots of music festivals now flogging tickets as fast as they possibly can for end of August and onwards. And actually the one that we run here in Nottingham has bravely launched their tickets this morning for a 24th of July date, so only a month after everything reopens, which is bold to say the least. I believe that a lot of that part of the industry were saying that there needed to be a different level of insurance that came out before they were willing to put those events on. And as far as I understand, that hasn't happened. The only thing that's changed is that there is this roadmap in front of us now. So again, I just thought it was interesting to see whether these tickets going on sale, is that just these guys taking a punt and going, crossing their fingers and hoping that everything will be all right and they can go ahead, rather than having anything to kind of support them if that timetable shifts and they can't run the event as they plan to.
Through Borough Garden, we're seeing an awful lot of festival style events, from weddings to corporates to the what we would all know as a festival event where you're buying a ticket and going along and there's a few thousand people going, and that's literally from the end of June. People are seeing this roadmap of that is what we're allowed to do and that's what we're going to go with, and they seem to be happy to be going ahead, and there's site visits happening, and you know, all the plans are there, and some of them are saying I'm going to reduce my numbers from where I would be normally. The vast majority of them are just, we're having an event, and actually there seems to be an appetite out there from everybody to get back to particularly leisure. I think corporate's going to be slower, but particularly leisure events.
I tend to agree with that, and to back that up, Martin will say, we've had a couple of inquiries come through this week, or last week, the end of last week and into the early part of this week, for corporates wishing to hold a festival or an outdoor type event, which is good. One of them is quite a big roadshow with trucks and things, but basically it's a social event that's been put on by a corporate for their guests. We also had a conversation with someone earlier in the week who was saying that they've had quite an influx of inquiries for Christmas parties for November and December. So, you know, people are starting to look ahead and are wanting to go for the feel-good factor, I think, by having outdoor events or Christmas parties.
Brilliant, thank you.
Sorry. I think the advent of like the rollout of the vaccination program is giving people confidence, thinking that by September, all adults should be vaccinated, or at least have had one round. Most of them would have had two, meaning that gatherings are less scary. And perhaps that's giving people either a false confidence or a renewed confidence that moving forward, be it inside or outside, is going to happen. Whether or not it happens at the same time as the roadmap from the 21st of June onwards, anyone's guess. But past that, I think the confidence that people will be vaccinated, those that choose to, means there's less chance of spread, means there's more chance of events.
My only concern, yeah, I agree with you entirely, Lynda, but my only concern with all of this is everyone goes gung-ho and books everything for late June, July, early August, and then for whatever reason, it's all put back, you know, and we've got to the situation where things have to be cancelled, which I think, coming back to Ross's comment, you know, I think that's fine with the smaller meetings and events up to 20, 30, 40, 50 or more. But once you start getting into the festival levels of attendance, the 150s, thousands, 2000s, it's a whole different ball game. And I know that, Mark, we had a conversation this morning about terms and conditions, and most of the venues, well, all of the venues that we work with, they're saying that they have flexible COVID type terms and conditions in place for just that reason. But when it comes to the B2C, the festivals, I think that could create all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I agree. Causes problems with booking acts anyway. If you've somebody bought me tickets last year for an outside festival that was pushed to this year to June and has now been pushed to August, and the lineup has completely changed because those people that they booked for last year were able to do this year, but then they can't do for June, but now they can't do August. So I'm not overly upset or worried about it because it's all 80s and I don't really care as long as they're dancing and it's all good. But the lineup is different, and that poses a challenge for organisers, full stop. You start booking stuff for July and you're going to have to move it to August, September. Can you guarantee your lineup? Will you lose revenue because people go, oh no, I booked it for that band, I want my money back? I do feel people are jumping the gun a bit. Like I said, maybe there's a false sort of confidence that they can move forward, but yeah, it's a worry when it comes to a roadmap, if you like, because it is only a guidance at the end of the day, and people I don't think heard that when they heard it. They just heard 21st of June, 12th of April. That's it. They didn't hear anything else.
I think we have to get to the 12th of April before anything else.
Totally agree.
If that occurs, then we can start thinking about, the next date from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are too far down the road too quickly.
Mark, you're absolutely right. This truly is a stepping stone affair. And it can be plan A and plan B and all of these great things, but you're right, you've got to reach the next milestone and see what happens to that one, and see where the government is interpreting the data, because as they say, they will be data driven, but it is about their interpretation of the data, and so each milestone has got to be reached, carefully considered, and then see where it goes from there. So cautious approach is best.
And I think that's part of the problem as well, is the interpretation, because the way the government seem to interpret some of the data, and then you'll get the so-called experts on TV who seem to interpret it completely differently. Just as an aside.
Any experts you had in mind, Kevin?
No. I wouldn't dream of going down that route.
I think I'll come in then before we stray into something that...
I was just trying to encourage a libel case of some description.
Doesn't need no encouragement needed for Kev, Julian. Don't worry.
Okay, so feels like a good time to get out of timetables and second guessing government and gambling and all that good stuff, and get into our next area, which is that word that we keep hearing, pivoting, and it done, I guess, speaks to this, with the majority of you saying that the biggest concern is adapting to the changing needs of customers when it comes to both hybrid services and consumer confidence. So given that there has been this big pivot to virtual, which we're doing now, and I'm definitely not enjoying a lot today, and hybrid events, and there's been some really positive stuff around sustainability when it comes down to the amount of people that are now traveling but still accessing content. It would be good to get the panel's view on whether they think remote and hybrid events are here to stay, and what implications that might have for traditional in-person events going forward.
Okay. I've started, so I'll carry on. But from conversations that I've had during talking to agents and venues alike, and bookers, I think virtual and hybrid, virtual in the short term will be with us, but I think hybrid will always be with us in some way, shape or form, for a number of reasons. Firstly, I think confidence in the early days is going to be difficult. So, the confidence for people to come into our venues, they've been working from home for 12 months or sitting at home sipping gin, watching lunchtime TV. To come back into an environment where A, they're working with a team, or B, they're going to a venue where they're meeting with people they haven't a clue who they are, it's going to have issues. There are going to be issues of confidence, not just being nervous about getting into that situation, but there's also the implications of mental health and well-being on the one side, and on the other side, is it what companies will want to do? You'll have risk-averse companies who'll turn around and say, well, actually, we want to go down the route of a virtual event because we don't want any of our team to take us to court because we put them into a room with someone who's got COVID, for example. So I think hybrid will come up quite a lot over the next, will be with us for quite some time. The other thing with hybrid, and you sort of touched on it, Ross, was the fact that with more emphasis being put onto sustainability, then certainly looking at the carbon footprint of any event, if you've got a national event, you could run the main part of the conference from, say, a venue in Birmingham, and then you could have satellite events in Manchester, London, whatever. So those people don't have to travel across the country. So that's another area to consider. Sorry, Julian, do you want to drop in here?
We're just thinking out loud. I mean, it's the interesting piece is certainly from the commercial point or from the corporate world is that international travel piece. I think the amount of time that it will take for that to come back, and where you've got companies who have to consider the health and well-being of their employees, especially if they're an international company or they're bringing in a speaker from overseas. Let's not mistake the fact that the vaccination program, regardless of the fact that, of course, in this country, it's not a legal obligation to be vaccinated, but the vaccination program is running slowly in Europe. And if we're looking at European companies, if we're looking at international companies, I would say that for meetings held in the UK, corporates have to be very, very sensitive to the fact that UK members might not want European people to travel to this country if the vaccination program is running behind schedule. Clearly, the EU's got themselves in a bit of a pickle over the whole thing in any case. Do we trust all the vaccinations from all the other countries, and what other strains are going to come around? So clearly, you know, we know that the hangover from COVID-19 is there for some years to come yet. It really is there for some years, and so we're faced with this opportunity, if you will, to put in place and to get a grip on and to understand and deliver hybrid events. I think we need to understand, you know, when is a hybrid event a Zoom meeting versus a hybrid event, and I think that's all about presentation and professionalism, if you will, and a bit of glitz and glam and that sort of stuff, versus just a team meeting of Zoomers, if you will. But you know, the hangover is there. It's there for some years to come, and I think that companies will have to be very, very cautious about how they proceed with setting up their meetings. I mean, let's not kid ourselves either. To put on a virtual event takes time, planning, and it's expensive. You know, to do it properly, there's cost involved. And to that extent, not only is there an element of educating the consumer, educating the customer, who might think, well, it's just, you know, plug a few people in and away we go. I think it's going to be important that venues really understand how these things get put together and are able to hold the hand of a client and help them through that process. So there's a huge amount to think about in here. Yes, it certainly helps in terms of sustainability and people traveling and all the rest of it. You know, all of that is positive. But there will be customers, clients of yours and others who will have experience of getting these things together. So they'll get their heads around it quickly and they'll have teams to help with it all. And there'll be others that will really need a holding hand here. And that's an area perhaps where venues can excel, and perhaps where venues should be, and I don't really want to touch on the sales and marketing piece because I know we're going to talk about that later, but where venues should be looking now proactively and positively to go forward and say how much they know, how much they understand about how to put these things on, who they've teamed up with, they've got the necessary bandwidth in place, you know, to deliver these things. No dig there, Ross, at you, but the necessary bandwidth in place, and you know, they're knowledgeable, they're professional, they could steal a march here. That would be my take.
The other thing is, and we've spoken about it many times, and Karen's there looking at me, and we've always talked about collaboration, and I think with the hybrids, to make it work for the person that's delivering it, then there has to be a great collaboration between a venue and a service provider of some description. Yep. and those two organizations need to get together and educate each other on what they need to get from this particular event and how collectively they can sell it to the to the buyers. But as you say, sales marketing bit comes a bit later.
Thank you. So you talked about consumers and customers quite a lot through that, and kind of how you package things up for people and how they respond to different types of services. And when I was in the miserable world of banking many years ago, we used to talk about this value exchange, this idea that if you wanted a customer to borrow some money from you, if you're a credit card company, then you had to take them on a journey to prove that it was the right thing for them to do, and what you would offer them to be able to share information with you. And one of the things that I've often thought about as we sort of emerge from this and we start to see in-person come back is how behaviours will differ when it comes to B2C versus B2B. So if you're selling a wedding or a party versus if you're trying to sell a meeting or conferencing. So Lynda, Claire, it would be good to get your perspective on those different types of consumer groups and how you think they will have evolved as we emerge out the other side of this.
So weirdly, hybrid wedding events are not a new thing. They've been around for quite a while. A few weddings that I've done in the past, I've had family members who couldn't come, couldn't travel or whatever, and we've set up tech so that they can watch it, be involved with it. There is a venue near me that has a dungeon, and they can only get 20 people in it. So it's very popular on Halloween, but they stream the ceremony from the dungeon to the people upstairs so they can witness the ceremony, and then everyone goes upstairs and has a party. So hybrid weddings are not a new thing, if you like. However, there are a lot of venues that don't realise you can do them. When I put a little call out earlier in the week to some wedding planning groups that I'm in, I got a very 50-50 response as to whether or not they offered them as a planner or as a venue, and whether they'd even been asked, or if people were just going, no, I just want to move my wedding to 2022 and have all the people that I can have. I'm not interested in the hybrid side of things. So it's a very mixed response, I think, as to whether or not people want to do it or feel like they can. I mean, I had a hybrid wedding, to be fair. My friend moved to Australia about 6 months before my wedding, and she was doing a reading. So she did it from Australia on Zoom. Well, not it was on Skype, actually. You know, and we have lovely pictures of her on the telly doing the reading and us watching it. And so hybrid weddings are not necessarily a new thing. I think they're just a new thing for venues to think about and to offer, and to understand that they are possible and can enhance a wedding rather than just be the negative COVID response to a wedding. It can actually go forward forever, having hybrid weddings and events. Parties, probably a different thing altogether. Claire can probably give a better insight on something that isn't a wedding.
Yeah, and I would say hybrid, for me, hybrid particularly has come all about, and it's about the corporate, whereas it's how you word it to weddings. So it tends to be a virtual wedding, not a hybrid wedding, or they feel that the corporate boardroom has just come into their wedding, which for a wedding couple is a total turn off. So it's how you market it, as always. Yeah. But they absolutely work. And you know, how long is it going to be before great grandparents are going to be happy to come to a wedding? Or the couple are wanting great grandparents to come to a wedding, and there are more and more great grandparents attending weddings these days. So it's very much about how you market that to that marketplace, if you like. But I would just say terminology. If you mention a hybrid wedding to a bride, there's just this horror if you tell them virtual. But again, you wouldn't market a hybrid conference or hybrid meeting as a virtual meeting, because that tends to have the wrong thought train attached to it. So I think it's interesting just how swapping words around for different marketplaces has totally different meanings.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I said, weddings, when it comes to the roadmap and what have you, some people have just gone, yay, 15, I'll take it. Other people, or 30, and other people have gone, absolutely not. I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing. I want my full people. But there is the question of how they then feel about all of those people. So I have a friend getting married actually at the beginning of July, so she's a little nervous because it's only like 10 days after the roadmap ends. So she doesn't know whether she should push it, whether she should wait and see. So she's basically waiting until April to see what happens. And she doesn't really want to lower her numbers. But then her second fear was, is there enough room now in my venue for all of my people for us to have the space that I feel we require? So where she had a room for 100 people, she still wants 100 people, but she wants a room for 200 people. So she's got all of the space that everybody feels comfortable with. So it's not just thinking about the one side of, can my wedding still go ahead? Can I incorporate virtual into that? How can I make it work? It's also thinking, what can my venue do to help make me feel safe and secure at my wedding for 100 people if I can manage to have them all there?
Yeah, and it's about
Lynda, that's a really, sorry, Claire, go on.
No, go on. I was just going to say, and it's, you know, about the venue, marketing the fact that they are a COVID secure venue so that you feel that you're safe walking into the venue. You want to see it on the website, you want to see it on their front door.
Yeah.
You just need that. You want to see that hand sanitizer as you walk in the door, as bizarre as that is. It just makes you feel, okay, I'm coming to somewhere that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, venues need to think about having a COVID statement on their website that people can find. You shouldn't have to go hunting for it. It should be right there, proudly displayed, so that when either when you've already booked your venue and you're looking forward to how it's going to go forward, or you're actually now just got engaged and you're looking for a venue, that thought will always be in the back of your mind. How secure is this going to be if I bring 100 people to this venue? And not just for you. I mean, some people may not care, but you've got 100 other people that do. So you've got to think about the entire thing. But it's got to be obvious. You can't just stick it at the bottom of your website or in a brochure and just go, we're COVID secure. I feel like you need to really do a song and dance about it and say, this is how good we are and how safe you will be when you have your wedding at our venue.
I think that's quite an interesting point, because I know from the corporate perspective, we're encouraging our venues to do quite a lot on that with proper videos and the likes. And you know, why Boston Lakes, for example, have got a fantastic video that it's actually you walking through the site and showing what they do.
Love that.
I think venues need to do that for all of the markets they're involved with. And I know we were talking to one of our other properties who now produce it. They produced one for the corporate market as to how they're making their guests safe. Now they're in the process of putting one together specifically for weddings and social events.
But that's got to be delivered on the day, Kevan, as well, hasn't it? Because the danger is there. It almost becomes the risk assessment that sits on the shelf, you know, and gathers dust, or the virtual shelf, shall I say, in the cloud, wherever it is. And all of a sudden, you know, you haven't got people regularly cleaning handles. You haven't got people visibly, you know, going round and doing and evidencing everything that you've said you've done. And then there's a problem, and then it all goes wrong. So I think you know, whatever you do, I would just urge people, like any risk assessment, you know, all risk assessments have to be reasonable and practical and deliverable. And if they aren't, then you set yourself up to fail right at the beginning. So, you know, absolutely set those standards out. I think the video solution is brilliant, but deliver it on the day. Make sure you can deliver it on the day, and back up everything that you're doing. It's a very, very positive message, and especially from the consumer side. You know, Lynda, just picking up on your point, if they're saying, you know, well, you know, kind of got 100 people, but I want a room for 200 people, you know. These are now different questions, different demands that are coming in from the consumer, and it's important to be able to answer those questions carefully, confidently, but to instill that confidence and belief that the venue is doing everything they possibly can to help us.
I agree.
But also from an operational perspective, the you know, if you convince the booker, whether it's a bride and groom or a corporate, at that stage, and they're reassured, that's brilliant. But if you think to the day of weddings, everybody attending the wedding has an opinion of whether the menu's right or whether the setup's right. It's not their day. They're not paying a penny towards it. Somebody else's day. But they're quite happy to tell you what their feelings are.
Oh,
I
yes.
suspect that this will just be a list of people willing to give you their views on whether you're COVID secure or not as well. So not only do you have the bride and groom to deal with, but you've got all of their guests with their own interpretation of what COVID secure actually means. So,
and remember, but remember, these people write reviews, and those reviews become very visible. And so again, there's a huge reputational piece here that says if you can, if people can talk positively about you and write positively about you, and the COVID element of that, then I do see that as a hugely positive influencer at present. Or the flip side, but let's stay positive for the moment.
That's where your point, Julian, of making sure that what you say you're going to deliver, you actually do deliver, and it's visible. I mean, you can do whatever you like behind the scenes, but I think especially when it comes to weddings, people want to see you cleaning things and making sure, that they're wiping down the handle after you've been to the loo, and they want to see it happening, and it's not just lip service that you've got it on your site and yes, that's what we do. I think it's very important that it is visible.
And I think my main takeaway from that is to work, if you're having a wedding, work closely with the venue so that they can allow you to discourage inviting all the people you don't like to your wedding by sharing the appropriate restrictions. You don't have to put up with any of that rubbish. So we talked about corporates and their confidence to put on events and have their staff coming back, and what risks that might create for them in terms of liability. One of the things that we've seen throughout this pandemic is increasing number of people working from home, and large businesses that are intending to close offices down and not have people return to a desk Monday to Friday. And so one of the things that we saw a little bit of over the summer when things started to open up was some venues in hospitality proactively going out and saying, we have this space, it can be used as casual workspace or casual areas for you to get together with your teams. I was wondering whether the panel thought that was likely to be a new permanent proposition for venues or something that was temporary, and if so, how would venues go about kind of selling that particular service to the market? So Martin, it'd be good to get your
sure. Thanks, Ross. It's very much a mindset, isn't it? I mean, we've had a year where we've just been kicked and then picked up and kicked again. So I think as an industry, it comes down to, do you have a positive mindset? I mean, the people around the screen today are all positive because they're here. Now, it's challenging for customers, it's been very challenging for staff, and it's obviously been challenging for Mark and many owners, groups and independents that we work with. But I think it comes down to the basics of what can we provide? What does the customer want? And, do we throw away the rule book? Because, things have moved on. And as you rightly say, I remember the days of working in large hotels where people used to come in, order one coffee, set up the laptop, and that was it for about 2 days or whatever. That was their office. And is that the new normal? It's hard to say. So I think we've got to be positive, but I think we've got to look for new opportunities. And it can sound trite because I'm not at the sharp end, like Mark will tell you in a minute. I don't own a venue, it's not my lifeblood, but it's our industry. And I think we've got to look at different work patterns. We've got to communicate with agencies. We've got to communicate with corporates directly. And I think it's a case of, well, what do they want? We've got virtual, we've got hybrid, as we've discussed, which are all absolutely fine. But there's nothing to beat that being there at a meeting, meeting colleagues, talking to customers directly. And we all know most of the work gets done at the bar anyway afterwards. But I think, it's a new opportunity. And again, it comes down to positivity and thinking. Is, some people haven't opened in a year. They've stuck their head in the sand maybe, and it's, woe is me, we just can't work. And yeah, it's been awful, but we're coming out of that. We've talked about Boris's roadmap for all it is. And I think we've got to see how it goes. We've got to try things. And it's a case of, well, we've tried that maybe 10 years ago, it didn't work. Well, that's 10 years ago, the world has moved on. And I think really we've got to look at how do we move forward. And again, I think a lot of it comes down to talking to the agents, talking to people and saying, how can we as an industry, as a venue, as a collective, how can we help you? What are you looking for? What are you being told? As the guys have just said, are they happy about turning up? Offices are fine, but sometimes you've got to get out of the office. You've really got to leave if it's something that's crucial, if it's something that's highly secretive or whatever. You need to go somewhere and help think. And I think the strategy from us guys is to really sell it to agents, to corporates at we're safe, but we're moving on. It's not just a case of, there's your day delegate rate, there's your beige buffet, take it or leave it. It's a case of, well, what do you want? Yeah, the answer is yes. Okay, guys, how do we go around? How do we go about providing that? So I think it really is up to us to be positive, and I think we can do that. And a lot of the stuff is you could say it's hardcore. It's your Wi-Fi links, it's your AV, all that kind of stuff. Well, I think customers, clients will take that as read, that is good. That needs to be up to speed, literally, or you ain't going to get any business. So I think we've got to literally think outside the box. Think outside as well as being thinking inside is going to people like Claire at Venue Queen and Borrow My Garden saying, what can we do? What is the new normal? What can we offer people? And give them some solutions. They'll come to us, and I think there will be a demand, because I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait to get out. I want to go places. I want to do stuff. I want to see things, meet people, bore them to death with my awful jokes. I want to get out there and do something. So I think that will happen. And but it's confidence as well. And moving to Mark, as I say, he's at the very sharp end. So it's easy for me to say all this. But Mark, what do you think from your side?
Well, I think from my side, it's very much about a mindset change from operators. It's not a case of, well, this is what we do. It's a case of, what does the customer want at this time? Before this latest lockdown, when we were open, we found that we had a number of groups that were of business people that were using us as a convenient location. One group in particular that would come in, I don't know, probably once a month, and two of them had arrived just before breakfast finishes, have breakfast, take a table in the restaurant. By the time they finish breakfast, two other colleagues have joined them, and then it's a meeting for 4 with coffees and alikes going on. And then by the time we get to lunchtime, somebody, another couple have joined them. So we're at 6, we're within the guidelines. And they're probably, if the first 2 are the last to leave us, they've probably been there for 6 or 7 hours. Teas, coffees, breakfast, lunch, and the spend is there. Would we have done that before? No, we'd have looked to sell someone a meeting room. But the reality is, we've got more money out of somebody not booking a meeting room with us, not having something formal, and meeting their requirements. At the end of the day, we took into account dietary requirements, and the answer was, if the chef's got it in the kitchen, yes, you can have it. If he hasn't, we'll give you an alternative, because you didn't want off the menu. So that in its, being off the menu presents a challenge going forward as to what your flexibility is. I mean, that works for me, but it's reactive, not proactive. And others have come in and said, in the afternoon, we just want to change the scenery, we're bored at home, have you got Wi-Fi we can connect to? Can we get a decent cup of coffee and a slice of cake? Thank you very much. Let's do it. It might be my restaurant, but my restaurant is now going to be the multifaceted room that is it available at that point, and what can you make use of that table for? So I think the challenge for certainly properties like us that are more rural is the guarantee of a good internet link. So I shall be delighted when fibre gets laid on to Chiseldon, hopefully in the not too distant future. Now we must be almost there for it to be installed, and then hybrid is a real possibility for us. And the nice thing for me there is that it brings into opportunities that we'd never been considered for. If you're looking for smaller, localized groupings of people to link up on a hybrid thing, it puts us perfectly into play against what would have been big operator properties in the past. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's really interesting that people kind of just gravitated to you and started doing the thing without you advertising the thing, and it then became a means of you kind of getting the same sort of income you would have done for selling a room. So we're going to move on, and I guess one of the things that probably we've all been through over the last 12 months, I know I have, is periods of dwelling in the woe is me, what are all the problems I've got and how can I possibly deal with them, rather than trying to do some proactive stuff. So clearly we're still in a period of uncertainty, even with the roadmap, and that brings with it ongoing financial concerns, staff that might still be on furlough, not necessarily a clear view of when they're coming back. But the venues and the world is going to reopen at some point, and we all hope it's going to be over the next 2 or 3 months. Given that that is coming down the line, what do the panel think that venues should be doing in terms of sales and marketing activity right now? What are the right and what's the right approach to that? And I'll come to you first, Julian.
In terms of the sales and marketing piece, I think this is about very, very clear communication on what you can do, how you can do it, who you partner with, but really know what you can sell, really understand that, and be very, very, very clear in how you communicate it. You know if you're selling hybrid, then be very transparent. That you use, this is the provider that we work with, you can talk to them, let's put you in touch, so that your needs are dealt with properly. They say that this is the space that is needed, this is the space that we have, this is the bandwidth that we have, and by the way, that is suitable for, you can talk in technical detail without having to be a real technician, because the chances are the person you're immediately selling to isn't a technician either. So if you're matching your language to the language or the level of understanding of your buyer, then you can deliver in information that should give confidence, and then put the technical people in touch with the technical people and get them together. So I think in that respect, you're clearly communicating what you can do, how you can do it, and starting to rebuild that trust and that confidence. And we're back to people buying from people at the end of the day, and that kind of psychological contract that's built in that process. And so by giving that confidence and that trust, it should help to start to get that process back in place. And of course, if you can steal a march over your competition in doing it, crack on and do it, definitely. Others will have a view, I'm sure.
For me, it comes back to that, stop saying no and start saying yes. And know your venue inside out. So if you're having a meeting, whether it's with an event organizer or a couple, and they ask you a question, you really should know the answer, because you should know your venue inside and out. And if you don't, then you should be able to get that answer. And you should be able to persuade those people that you're asking to give you the answer that you want in order to win the business or win the wedding or whatever. But you really do need to know your venue inside out. Like Julian said, you should be able to say, this is what we've got, this is what you can do with it, this is how we can make it work. We may not have this, but we have this instead, and we can do it this way. Give them the answers to the questions before they've even asked them, so they feel confident that you do know your venue and what it can give them.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I think a lot of it, again, we've touched on communication, we've touched on talking to people. I think a lot of it is old school, going back to the days of just talking to people, even on that thing called, was it the telephone instead of emails? Phone people up, talk to clients, people who've used you before, people you were in the middle of, hopefully doing business with a year ago that, we've all dropped off the edge of a cliff. And Julian's quite right about, it's the basic stuff. It's being creative moving forward. It's communicating. But also what we've tried to do over the last year at Trident, our clients, you could say our customers, are both agents and the independent venues we work with. So we've had regular Zooms, we've had regular communications. we've passed on information. And I think moving forward, the likes of, Ruby and Karen and agencies want to know what you're doing now, what you're doing in the future. We talk to them, we communicate, we get back, well, this is what the client feels. They're not sure about this. They don't want that. They want to move away. So proactively, it's not rocket science. It's talk to, communicate with agents, buyers, customers. What do they want? What can we provide? What Mark was saying about how his restaurant, that's just a name now. It's gone. It's a multifunctional suite for anything you like if it's legal to do. So it's very much a case of it doesn't matter what you have, what you've done in the past, it's moving forward. Yeah, of course, you've got limitations, indoors, outdoors, city centre venues, countryside, of course, people want to be outdoors spring and the summer. But again, a lot of it is awareness. And how do you get that? How do you get that out to people? You can have the best facilities, but if you're not telling them, they won't know. And it's do or die. So again, Kevan and I, a couple of old codgers, we're really into social media. We tweet like there's no tomorrow. We LinkedIn till our arms drop off. We've started a YouTube channel this week, and it was like, the Chuckle Brothers, to me, to him, to you. So, you've got to try these things. Some might not work. Some might be better than others. Some you might get prosecuted for crimes against acting or something, presenting. So it really is, it's change or die. You've got to do stuff. And I think there's going to be a lot of venues, and we know certainly already that are going to go to the wall, might not proceed. It's going to be tough, certainly to start off for the first 3-6 months. So we've got to take it in time chunks. What can we do now? What can we do 3 months, 6 months, and get confidence back for you guys, the agents, the corporates. Come and try us. We're safe. That's a prerequisite. That's given. But hey, look what they've done with the food offerings. It's not just, as mentioned earlier, the beige buffet. It's doing something a bit creative and listening to what people say. What's the feedback? What can we do to help win the business, get people back, keep coming back, and then grow that business? It's the old things at the end of the day. It's talking, communication, sales, phone. Yeah, brochures are great. Website, make sure you're up to date with your COVID stuff, as you mentioned earlier, but also with your contracts. At the moment, a lot of venues are saying about contracts, there's no cancellation fees up until a given period beforehand. Work with people. What can get that bit of business over the line, and then move it on, and then gradually, hopefully, we can build that. But anyway, I could talk about it all day, so I won't. So someone else.
There's another element to that as well, though, Martin, too, which is knowing your customer and the demographic of your customer. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not sure how many generations there are now, X, Y, Z, whatever, blah blah blah. But they do buy in different ways. They want different things. They're expecting to interact in different ways. And so truly understanding that and who you are marketing to, what your segmentation is of significant value. And I think arguably, it's probably more important now than it ever was, because where a venue or a property may look to either invest or repurpose a space, he says, with his kind of asset management hat on, and look at just, I've got physical space here. How the hell do I earn money from it? How do I earn more money than I earned before from it? Who are you trying to sell that space to? And I think there needs to be a lot of thought on that, because investment could go wrong, or alternatively, investment could be right. So well worth just thinking through who you're selling to.
Yeah, I think people need to remember as well, they can't be all things to all people, even though they seem to want to. I get that a lot with venues that I work with. When I say who's your ideal customer, they're like, everybody wants to get married. Like, that's untrue. Because when I was looking for a venue, for example, I did not want packages. So there's a venue that I work with that only offers packages, so they don't need to talk to me. They need to know who they're talking to, why they're talking to them, and how they're talking to them, and just talk to those people. Anyone else on the fringe will come in if they're interested, but make sure your message is pointed and true, and then you will get back what you want. If you just send it out to everybody, then everybody's going to read it. 98% of them are just going to put it in the bin, and 2 might come and give you an inquiry, and both of them might not bother confirming because you don't really know who you're talking to. So be very aware of, again, back to knowing your venue inside out, knowing what you can and can't offer, and then talk to the people that you can offer that to in a voice that they can hear.
Thank you. Brilliant. I'm going to move on because I'm conscious of time. So we've got one last area we're going to pick up with the panel. I'm going to launch our second poll in a moment. I'm getting abuse from the panel as well. How terrible. especially when I'm so sensitive after my Wi-Fi disaster. I'm going to launch the poll in a moment, and I'm going to ask you to come up with some questions that we could throw at these folks, in particular Martin, who needs interrogating at the end of this based on him abusing me via chat. So we will move on. So I guess one of the things that we're all conscious of is, with everything having been closed for so long, there are a number of people that have left the industry and gone to seek employment elsewhere. People that have been around for a long time and have got, you know, years of experience under their belt, and therefore I guess that, coupled with the conversation we've had earlier about the evolution of the services and the packages that venues are offering, I'd like to get the panel's view on skills within the industry on an ongoing basis, training, what the implications are for skill shortages, and what kind of training and readiness do venues need to have in place for their teams. And I will put that to you, Lynda, please.
Okay. So, well, it was interesting actually, because Mark and I had a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago, seeing it from two different views. So I'll let Mark talk about his side of it from the venue side of things. For me, it was like, I mean, I don't know who knows me really on here, but not many people. My background is hospitality and events. Worked in hotels most of my life. When I wasn't doing that, I was working in weddings or events and live exhibitions and things like that. So I know a lot of salespeople from a lot of venues from around the country. And the thing that freaked me out the most throughout all of last year was how many of them were made redundant and how many of them disappeared to another industry altogether and took all of that knowledge with them. And then you're left with a venue that will eventually come back online without probably the most important person who can go out there and find your business, because they're not there anymore. You can, of course, get someone new in, but that person then has to build relationships again with the agents, with the companies, with the locals and everything else, and you're almost starting from scratch. So I thought it was just a real eye-opener, a real smack in the face, really, to realise how much knowledge the whole industry has lost in the last year. I mean, from a wedding perspective, a wedding's just a great big event, let's face it, but you do have to speak differently to brides than you do to corporate bookers. They don't like it if you talk to them like a corporate booker. So you almost have to have two languages. It's very, very different. You can't go throw in contracts at brides before you've even shown them the room and gushed over the ring and wondered how the dress is and all the rest of it. But a corporate booker doesn't really care if you like their frock, and you know, so two very different languages, and you do have to master it, I think. And a lot of the people that have that skill have taken it away, and it is a hard skill to learn, I think. You know, you've either got a dual personality, Gemini, or you don't. But I'll let Mark talk about, he had some interesting points from a venue perspective, and not only to do with good old COVID, but also good old Brexit.
Oh,
yeah,
you said the B word.
Yeah, somebody had to bring it up, I'm afraid. Look, COVID and Brexit have gone hand in hand to create probably a skill shortage. In my mind, the British view of hospitality has to change. You know, at the end, otherwise the consumer at the end of the day is going to suffer. You know, the days of having Italian, French students over working, you know, with the mentality that goes with that for the summer has gone. You know, there's still a view in this country that hospitality is not a career, it's what you do while you're working your way through university. But hospitality is a great career opportunities for people if you're so minded. I think from my side, for us as a property, our team is likely to stay smaller, with the team being multi-skilled across all departments. The kitchen will still be a specialised area, but other people, it's about personality and having a strong team that's able to talk to people and deal with the customers as they arrive and sort out whatever it is that they require. So for me, certainly smaller properties, going to be multi-rolled and people working cross departments, cross areas. And I think there's an opportunity there in recruitment that from our side we will probably go with the team interviewing at a first stage, and then if they, you know, with a view of does this person then fit within the team, rather than working against the team, and then it will end up being a manager and then myself interviewing at that stage. But we'll see what happens.
When I was many years ago training and doing a BTEC, because that's how old I am, I worked in the restaurant within the college as part of my learning, which I really enjoyed. I didn't think I wanted to go into working in a restaurant. I always knew I wanted to work in hotels and generally behind reception. I like the front office side of things, but I had to do it. I had no choice. I still had to learn it. I learned silver service, a skill I still have today that not many people do. And so a couple of years ago, actually, I had a wedding. My other hat is actually delivering weddings. So I was delivering a wedding in a dry hire venue, and the bride had said to me, "Can you provide staff?" And I'm like, "Sure." I just say yes, and then I figure out how to do it afterwards. So I just thought, where am I going to get staff from? So I went to my friend who works in a restaurant, but it was a Saturday, and obviously virtually impossible for her to pull her and her restaurant friends out. So I was like, oh, so what do I do now? So I went to my local college, and they have a training restaurant. They have a hospitality course. It's just it's a sixth form college, 16 to 18, which is what I did. And they have a training restaurant. So I rang them up and I just said, do you think any of your little bodies would like to come and work in the real world in a wedding? And they were beside themselves with excitement that they could actually get their students out of the restaurant and into the real world. And it was a very simple wedding. It was just a place and clear. The bride, God lover, had made pretty much everything herself. She made pate, she made desserts. The main dish was a hog roast. So it was quite simple, but it still required a very high degree of professionalism. You had uniforms made and everything. Was dead excited, but it was just that realization that that it was there, because I forgot, to be honest, that colleges, not universities, that colleges do still train in hospitality. I thought it had disappeared because I just don't hear about it anymore. And when I was talking to the three lovely young people that came to work with me, I asked them why they're doing it. And they all had the same answer, which was because it just seems like a really exciting thing to do, and they think they'd be able to travel. And that is exactly the reason I did it. I didn't travel with it in the end, to be honest, but if you do travel, I did live in Belgium for a little while, but if you do travel, it's a skill that is multilingual. You can take it anywhere. You don't have to speak the language, you just have to know how to do it. But yeah, I was really surprised. So that was my take. I don't know if they're everywhere. I mean, I live in Middlesbrough, small town, small deprived town, full of restaurants, would you believe, that are all closed. But I did not know that still existed. I knew it existed in universities for events and the higher grade of things. I did not know it existed still in restaurants, in colleges for restaurant training and front of house training, things like that. So,
thank you.
Thank you. I think the other thing that will need to be taken into consideration, and has been pretty big in the news and in our industry as well, is mental health, and recognizing that, because I know Martin and myself come from an age where it was like, get a grip and get on with it, but things have moved on from there now, and that's part of the process that needs to be considered in bringing a team back into the business to work full time. You can't expect the whole team to turn up on a Monday morning and start serving a conference for 250 at tea break. So,
and it's interesting in that respect, just how many of the sort of the HR apps or platforms, even on the rewards and perks platforms, are also putting in that welfare piece as well, and that mental well-being as part of the offering that's available. And I think you're absolutely right. It is something that will grow and continue to grow and just become a part of life. And therefore, again, for the workforce of the future, an expectation that those support services or those avenues, those channels are there. And I think from an employer's perspective, if you don't have them, You know, that's kind of possibly a little cross against your name versus another employer. Again, it's going to be one of those things you just need to do. You just need to have in place.
Interestingly, on the mental health and well-being point, I was on a Zoom session with a few people last week, and there were two venues that turned around and said what they are considering now is actually getting rid of targets as such, because of the pressure it builds on people just coming out of the situation that we've been into. And they're taking a more holistic view of the business, and what's good for the business and good for the team is the route they will go, as opposed to turning around and say, well, the difference between that booking and that booking is 20 grand, so we'll take that one because it's worth more. But we'll see how that pans out in 6 months' time when they're sitting there looking at their bottom line. Not that I'm being cynical.
So we've got a very kind of a nice follow-on question from Karen that you guys might have seen in the chat, which says, do we think venues will be bringing full staff quotas back for the end of June in anticipation of a full reopen? So it's maybe one for you, Mark, to kind of talk about directly to start with, and then we'll get the other guys as well.
Economies of scale, I think. Depends on the size of your property and what your pipeline's like. From our side as a small property, the reality is I would think by the end of June, if the roadmap goes as it's set out to, yes, we will have everybody back in. But I can look at some of the substantially bigger properties in the surrounding area to us, and unless they're going to fill their 20 meeting rooms, the answer will be no. So I think one of economies of scale for a property.
Just going a bit sort of left field on that one, it's down to us working with you, Karen and Ruby, to make sure that your customers have got shed loads of business for the 23rd of June.
No pressure.
There's a bit of a different angle with it, isn't there, though, because the government doesn't believe that, hence the reason the furlough has been extended through to September. Yes. And also, dare I say it, and this is a sort of it's a fairly cheap shot, really, but you know, maybe bringing full quotas back, because if people have been let go, then, you know, they're now not employing 50 people, they employ 20 people. You know, the numbers suit my argument, of course. So yes, you know, bringing back full quota, but the quota was less than before. So I accept those are two fairly cheap shots, but I think they're relevant in the context of the conversation. Doesn't necessarily take it forward, though. Sorry.
Thank you. Ruby's going to take the floor in a second and ask you about 15 questions. So,
I've seen the comments on chat. This will be interesting.
I'm excited.
I'm going to hand over to her now.
That's built it up, hasn't it? I had a couple of questions. I'm gonna pick up on the I think, Lynda, it was your point about experienced people who had left the industry over the last year, and looking at the other end of the scale, so people who are, whether they're event management graduates or if they're coming into our industry from having completed other degrees or apprenticeships or something else. And what I think is quite interesting is bringing in that sort of fresh blood, so to speak, that are eager, that are willing to learn, that want to build their careers. And most importantly, I think, because if you think about the innovations that have happened, whether they're within our industry or on a global scale, I mean, things like Clubhouse that have absolutely, taken over. I've been in a few Clubhouse chats. I'm still getting used to it. I feel like such a dinosaur. And I've been in with a lot of these event grad groups. And they are all over Clubhouse. They know what they're doing. They're having discussions. They're hungry. And I think there's that opportunity of bringing in graduates who could fill what I think, Mark, you mentioned, that kind of multi-rolled sort of role, being flexible, being hungry, and the rest of it. So I guess it's a question to the panel around, you know, is it useful to be bringing in that fresh blood after so much change, or do you think we need sort of a balance of experienced people who have been in our industry for a long time, who, you know, is it both of those things? And I'm guessing yes, to a certain degree, but I think we probably shouldn't discount the graduates and the, you know, apprentices or whatever they are, the early entrants to our industry. Has anybody got any thoughts on that?
I have actually, and I think you're right. And I think if it's good for our industry, then we should encourage those sort of people to come into the industry and work alongside the old. If you think you're a dinosaur, have you met Martin?
Oh, come on,
Martin.
But I think it's important to. It's like Martin said earlier. We're a couple of old fossils, but we've embraced all of the new stuff, and to bring youngsters in, to bring young professionals in that have different skills from a technical perspective, the likes of Clubhouse and all of these different elements. I just think it's great for the industry. I mean, you know, perhaps now is the time for us to look at the industry as a whole and perhaps reboot and restart.
I do wholly agree. The only thing I would say is you need some dinosaurs for them to learn from. So there is maybe absolutely a need for the two, because if you just got rid of everybody who's been doing it for 30 years and brought in the newbies, yes, they would have some ideas, but there are still some things that need to be, I think, passed down through the generations, adapted to suit the new skills coming through. But definitely, I think they need ideas in order to push them forward on how they can then change that and make it better. So I'm absolutely all for new people coming in. I would love the passion to be had. I got into it because I love it. You certainly don't do hospitality for the money. you do it because you really enjoy it. And I did all sorts. I mean, at one stage of my life, I was torn between working for well, I'm just going to name it, a place in Bognor Regis, let's say that, and a 4-star hotel. But the 4-star hotel was in the restaurant, and that's not where my passion truly lie. But I thought I'd still rather work in a 4-star hotel than have the place in Bognor Regis on my CV. So I went and I worked there, and I had the time of my life. It was so much fun, because I forgot that actually I just love being in hospitality. I love working with people, talking to people. I don't really care where they are, whether I'm behind a desk or in the restaurant. I just love it. So I'd love to see that passion coming through. I guest lecture for Huddersfield University for their event degree, and I love it because it's so random, the things that the students come up with, but usually, and I can spot them, a room of 30 people, and there's maybe 5 that it's in them. It's just in them, and they're going to be brilliant, and you can see it already because the passion is right there. They're not doing it for money. They're not just trying to make a name for themselves. They want to make brilliant events, or they want to be fabulous in hospitality, and you can't teach that. It's got to be there already. Like Mark said a while when we were chatting, he just wants someone who's going to turn up and have a passion, and then he can teach them the rest.
You need the graduate to rub off on the dinosaurs as well.
Absolutely, yes. And I think you're exactly. I think you're right there. I mean, over the years, I was born in a pub. No surprise there, some would say. So
you never left.
Some would say that too. Only when Martin puts his wallet away. But all through my career, I've worked. I started, and it was all very traditional, sort of 4-star. It was silver service, all of that, all of the old stuff. But then you get the youngsters coming through, and especially as I've got older, it's recognizing and understanding people's passions and trying to develop that and giving them an opportunity to move forward. And just stand there in the background and say, oh, you didn't do that right, or you could have done this, or, and just working with them to develop them, not chastising them and sucking all of their confidence away. Yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling now. Ramblings of an old man.
No, from our side, it's very much a case of we take on a lot of youngsters in the village and surrounding area, and probably for their first paid employment. And the key thing for me, for anybody of any age, is if you show me enthusiasm and you've got a little bit of personality there, we can train you, we can develop you. We've got people who know what they're doing. They need support. And at the end of the day, if you've got an idea, tell us what your idea is, because you might be seeing something that's glaringly obvious and we've all missed it. But with your enthusiasm and our experience, we can develop you, and you can make out of this whatever you want it to be. But don't tell me you know, don't arrive late, and don't tell me as soon as your shift is supposed to be over, you're going in the middle of, you're in the middle of rooming someone, but you're going home because you finished your shift. Well, that doesn't work, and you'll be short-lived. But yeah.
Also, just a final point, I think, is that also those that have been in our industry who are coming back to work at some point, whatever that is, they'll be coming back to a very different world in a way. You know, things will be very different for them. So it's also bridging a gap, I think, in terms of what was, and they'll be nostalgic about, and also the reality that's in front of them, I think. So it'll be fascinating, it'll be interesting, and it'll be hard, I think, as well.
Yeah, I agree.
My next question, if you don't mind, Ross, am I okay to ask another one?
You go ahead. I'm having a rest.
Okay, good.
Done nothing all day.
I've got 5 minutes. I promise I'll be quick. So I am a very positive person, but I've been very cautious about the reopening and the roadmaps and all the rest of it. And to throw into the mix, I live in Scotland now, so we have a very different roadmap altogether in comparison to England. So our dates are all over the shop. So in terms of the roadmap that the Prime Minister has laid out, the responses that I've seen on LinkedIn and elsewhere from people in our industry, which was the discussion at the start of the event, I feel that these words might be a bit strong, they might be a bit controversial, but I feel that people in our industry are possibly being a bit naive, kind of, optimistically naive, and perhaps, I'm going to use this word, irresponsible, to think that we can just jump the gun and start planning and start booking venues and all that sort of stuff. So am I coming across quite strong when I say that as a planner, as an organizer, and someone who runs an events business and has to be responsible for the events that we put out there, but also how we advise and consult our clients and our venues and everyone else, is it naive and a bit irresponsible for those in our industry to sort of jump the gun and start planning and start booking and start putting dates in? And I think some comedians were putting in tour dates in September, and there's a lot of that going on. What is the sort of thought of the panel? What are the thoughts of the panel on that?
I would agree with you. I don't think you've been too strong. When you say about comedians, I think that covers all of the people that you've spoken about so far. Sorry. But I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who was saying, and I said, well, how are bookings coming through for you? And they said, well, all of these people who are putting on LinkedIn that the phones have been ringing off the hook are either deluded, stupid, or just completely naive. So because yes, if you look at how we were this week in comparison to where we were last week, the phones are busier. But if you look at what we're doing this week in comparison to what we were doing 18 months ago, we're not any further down the line. And those people that say they are and say that they're really busy, like I say, it's her words were, it's BS.
Really?
But it's down to the venues as well to take the responsibility on, yeah, absolutely, we've got availability, absolutely, we can take your booking, yeah. But this is all on condition of the roadmap allowing it to go ahead.
Mm.
It's about building, open relationships between venues, between bookers, agents, whoever, an open dialogue, and being realistic at the same time, cautiously realistic. Yeah.
I think it's fair enough that people, like you say, venues have had such a tough time, Ruby, same as everyone in event bookers, agencies, AV companies. I think everyone's just desperate to be, let loose and say, right, we can crack on. But I think, as Lynda alluded to earlier, any restrictions, any any dates, the 12th of April, we're all hanging our hat on that. If that's late, then it blocks and stops things from moving. So I think, yeah, as Mark said, we've got to be realistic, but I think we've got to think, right, okay, with the vaccines, with what's happening, we've got to think positively. And yeah, things might change, but we've got to crack on it, or it would be a case of now or never in some way. So I think, yeah, but quite rightly communicating with everybody involved, customer, agencies, venues, etc. But yeah, but potentially, but until we're told otherwise, then that is what we're told. That's what we've got to work with. That's the proviso. But it could all change, in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
so.
but I think as an industry, we've got to be cautiously confident, because we need something. We need, as individuals, I think we need something to work towards. And I think the problem last week was that on Tuesday, everybody's coming in going, yes, and then they start reading the small print and it's like, oh dear, this could go horribly wrong. Yeah. So it's about striking a balance, really.
It is. I think venues, if they could look at what they can offer at each stage of the roadmap, that can be easily pushed, if you like. I mean, would, again, cautiously optimistically, would like to believe that it would only be pushed by a week, but it might not. We watch the figures every day, every week. My husband's obsessed, bless him. But so we know if it's up, if it's down. But I don't work in a venue, so that's fine. And I'm taking no weddings on for this year because there's just no point. I really can't be doing with the cheer of moving them all, quite frankly. So my weddings, my book is only open from 2022 anyway, from that side of things. But if I were a venue, if I were working in a venue, I'd be thinking to myself, and I will do this from a wedding perspective, but you can obviously see it from your own, is like, so what can we offer? When can we offer 15? When can we offer 30? When can we offer them all? What can we do? How can I advertise to people that they can have a 15, 30 and an all wedding, party, event, gathering, social? How can I convey to whoever's looking at me that we're doing it, that we're planning it, but obviously with a push that if it all goes to shit, then it will all be moved ahead. So it is a tough one because contracts, I do nothing but talk about contracts, quite frankly, in one of my groups. That's all anybody ever talks about, because moving events is a nightmare. Moving weddings is a real nightmare because it's not just a hotel and an AV company. It's a hotel, an AV company, a photographer, a caterer, a videographer, the balloon artist. It's everybody. There's hundreds of people involved. So moving it is a nightmare. But I do still think, again, that there's always that thing. Stop thinking, what can't we do? Or we can't do that. And start thinking, what can we do? And how can we do it? And just change that mindset a little bit so that even if your revenue is going to be less, at least it's going to be revenue. Best to have something than nothing, maybe.
And corporate inquiries are starting to come through. They're even less remote, the ones that want to sign though. But they're happy to put the inquiry in. They're not quite so happy to sign on the dotted line though.
Yeah,
and that will come, I think. But at the moment, there's that cautious, pessimistic maybe, is the thinking, yes, I'll ask about it, but no, I won't commit to it.
Yeah, really, really want to do it. I want to get it all in place. No, I'm not prepared to put my money where my mouth is though.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's the feedback we're getting from our venues, isn't it, Martin?
There's so many factors out of your control, though, isn't there? Like, say, why would you sign something unless you had to? And yeah, it's understandable, isn't it, at the moment?
They all seem to have inquiries and provisionals and whatever on the books, but they're all sitting there poised with their pen, waiting for Boris to give the go ahead.
So it used to be, was it 18 to 30? Now it seems to be 15 to 30 we talk about, isn't it?
I thought you meant something completely different by 18 to 30 there, Martin.
I did.
Right, on that note, conscious of time, does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask? I think Lynda's positive message at the end of thinking about what you can do rather than what you can't is a really optimistic way of us starting to think about closing out. But if there are any more questions, pop your hand up and we'll deal with them before we close.
Did we get the results of the last poll, Ross?
I'm going to share them now. I didn't want to distract you while you were talking. There's a slight chance it might not have worked due to my earlier technical problems, but
Oh, okay.
what does that, can you see actual percentages on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because all of mine say 0%, but
All right.
what was the winner?
Engagement of teams at 57%.
Okay.
You haven't got a business, have you? If
In
you've
the
got an
main-
engaged team.
Yeah,
Investing in the venue, that's interesting.
but that's a 0. Yeah.
Mm.
Sales and marketing. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've always said, haven't we, people by people, and if your people know what they're doing and they know their venue and they know what they're talking about, then moving forward works.
Your team's your best asset, isn't it? Without your team,
Yeah.
you've got a business.
And I think at the moment people are a little confused as to, as we've already discussed, what they can and can't sell, because you don't want to be ramming it down people's throats. It's about relationships at the minute.
Yeah, I'm finding out who's there, who's still there in the corporate world and the agency world.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to start by saying thanks to these guys that have been answering all your questions. I've spent a bit of time with them over the last couple of weeks, and the insights have been brilliant. And today I think it's been really, really good. Some really diverse answers, lots of different perspectives, and I've found it really informative. So I hope you have as well. And a thank you to all you guys for coming along. Appreciate you giving up an hour and a half of your time. I know, I'm not sure you've been able to hear everything I've said because I'm tethered, but apologies for the technical stuff. But again, these guys have stepped in and done a great job of coordinating things while I've been having a meltdown over Wi-Fi. So anything our panelists would like to close with before we say cheerio?
It's Martin's round.
Always Martin's round, isn't it? It's funny.
But
No,
there's
thank you
nowhere
for
to go.
coming. But try and
Thank
be
you.
positive
Thank you.
and keep safe. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice to
Thank you.
see a couple of faces. I know. Nice to see Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
But yeah, thanks for coming along, and good luck to everybody. Let's go out there and smash it. Don't we just hate that?
Yes. Yeah. Looking forward to those days when we're out and about on our travels and we can shake hands, hug, have coffee.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so
beer,
desperate for a cuddle.
wine. I know. I've missed your cuddles, Lynda.
I'm desperate for cuddles.
Right,
You all know how I love to
recording
cuddle.
there,
I'm
Ross.
desperate.
That's it.
And this is going to be the soundbite that goes out on social media.
No, don't put it on Facebook.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ross, for putting it together.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you, Ross. Yeah.
Have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Yeah, you too.
We'll be in touch soon. There'll be some stuff coming out on the video and a little survey. So if you take a couple of minutes to fill that in, we'd really appreciate it.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.